All right, so we've got a new build here at the shop that we're in the middle of working on. It's a 19-foot Cuda Craft. These were very famous boats back in the 60s and 70s. There was a gentleman named Ray Bond, and he developed this boat, and it was an awesome backcountry boat, and it did really well in rough water as well. And I'm actually excited about working on it because there's some things I see that can be corrected and fixed. This is not one of the original boats from back in the 60s and 70s. These boats were actually reconstructed and came back to life back in the early 2000s with all new types of materials and composites. But as I'm finding out, they didn't do such a good job rebuilding these boats the second go around. He just purchased this boat, and I don't understand. The boat's not that old, and I kind of find it odd that the tank's leaking. Maybe a bad sender or something. We're gonna have to make some modifications, and we're gonna have to put this boat back to what the original boats were, and actually a little better. We're gonna bring this up to marine custom standards. So once Roberto started cutting a small area, we noticed that there was a bunch of foam underneath the deck. Now, at first we thought there might have been a soft spot in the deck, but they actually just built a liner on a mold and laid it over top of the stringers and poured foam inside the hull. That's not a good thing. There's actually not a lot of rigidity or support because this foam is floating and moving all around, which is giving you the feel of a soft deck, but it's actually not. This is solid fiberglass, and there's nothing rotten or soft about it. The boat's got composite core in it, and there is no wood. But the way they put it together is completely wrong. They just did pour foam, and it was totally inconsistent, and it was in some places all the way to the bottom of the floor, and in some areas it had big air voids and gaps. And there was nowhere for the water to go. So it was literally just saturated and sitting down inside the boat once it got down there, and didn't have anywhere to go until it evaporated. That's ridiculous. This boat was probably waterlogged and carrying around hundreds of pounds of weight that it just didn't have to. It was a nightmare. I spent days just cutting in, removing piece by piece at a time, just to find out that the stringers weren't even bonded to the hull of the boat. This was unbelievable to me. I've seen this before in production boats, where they're trying to make things happen faster than they should, but this was ridiculous. These stringers were not bonded at all. They probably weren't bonded from day one. This boat's just been driving around and floating around with a bunch of foam in between the deck and the hull, and I'm kind of really surprised. The condition of this boat, it didn't look that way when it first pulled up here at the shop. So I had to reach out to him and get an okay, because this is all work that we had no idea was going to come about. Once I got an okay, I was able to start putting the stringers back in the boat. When this boat first arrived at my shop, you would have never imagined that the stringers were never bonded into the hull properly. We've had to grind every square inch of the stringer and the hull area that we're going to bond with these new laminations of glass. There's a major difference between qualities of materials out in the industry. If you don't have the right product or the right quality of that product, you could have all kinds of problems and issues. I think that might be part of what's going on with this boat. There's all types of bonding issues. The stringers are pretty solid. Everything's hand-laid, laminated. It's all good, except the way it was all processed and put together. It's not done properly, and it might have been not the best of products. Now, I reached out to my friends at Fiberglass Coatings. They're actually supplying us with all type of high-end quality materials now, and we're not gonna have an issue with this bonding. This thing's gonna hit the water and break through the waves the way it was designed and originally intended to back in the 60s and 70s. This boat's gonna be completely different than it ever was back in 2006 when it was first built. We've got to get the boat put back together. There's all kinds of things I need to do. There's a deck that needs to go in this boat. There's a bilge. We need to add limber holes to all these stringers. I'm not filling this boat up with foam again. I want water to get into the bilges. I want water to get out of the bilges.